Waitress gave her meal to an old couple. Next day, a millionaire knocked on her door. But when he discovered the truth, the entire city watched him fall to his knees. Subscribe now, or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. The rain hammered against the diner's windows like it had a personal grudge against New Jersey. Lena Torres wiped down the last booth, her movements automatic after 3 years of closing shifts. The clock above the coffee station blinked 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until she could lock up and drag herself home to her studio apartment. Outside, the neon sign flickered, casting red and blue shadows across the wet asphalt. Empty highway, abandoned cars. The kind of night that made you grateful for walls and a roof, even if they belonged to someone else. "Almost done, Lena?" Greg's voice carried from the kitchen, gruff as always. "Just finishing up," she called back, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. The bell above the door chimed. Lena's heart sank. Late-night customers usually meant trouble, drunks looking for coffee or worse. But when she turned, her chest tightened for a different reason entirely. An elderly couple stood in the doorway, trembling. The woman's coat hung off her thin frame like it belonged to someone twice her size. The man's hands shook as he guided her toward the nearest booth, his face drawn with exhaustion and something deeper, desperation. "We're about to close," Greg announced, emerging from the kitchen with his arms crossed. The woman's eyes met Lena's. No words passed between them, but Lena saw it all. The kind of hunger that came from skipped meals, not just tonight, but many nights. The shame of entering a restaurant you couldn't afford. The hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would show mercy. Lena's own dinner sat wrapped in the kitchen. Turkey sandwich and fries. Nothing fancy, but it was hers. "Actually," Lena said, moving toward them with a smile she didn't quite feel, "we've got a special running. Last call courtesy meal." "On the house." Greg's eyebrows shot up. "We don't have—" "It's from my tab," Lena interrupted firmly, meeting his gaze. "Please." He studied her for a long moment, then shrugged. "Your funeral, Torres. Your paycheck." Lena brought them her dinner, plating it properly with a garnish she added herself. The woman's hands trembled as she reached for the fork. Tears slipped down her weathered cheeks, and she tried to speak, but no words came, only gratitude too deep for language. "It's okay," Lena whispered, placing her own jacket around the woman's shoulders. "Take your time. The heat's better in this corner anyway." The old man looked up at her with eyes that had seen too much of the world's cruelty. "God bless you, young lady. We won't forget this. Ever." Something caught in Lena's throat. "Just pay it forward someday." She busied herself with closing tasks, giving them privacy. Through the kitchen window, she watched them eat slowly, savoring every bite like it was a feast instead of a simple sandwich. The woman kept touching the jacket wrapped around her shoulders, as if she couldn't quite believe its warmth was real. When they finally left, 40 minutes past closing, the woman pressed Lena's hand between both of hers. Her touch was paper-thin and surprisingly strong. "Martha Devereux," she said softly. "I'll remember you." Lena smiled, tired but somehow lighter. "Lena Torres, stay warm out there." The couple disappeared into the rain, 2 small figures swallowed by the storm. Greg locked the door behind them with more force than necessary. "You know that comes out of your pay, right?" "I know." Lena grabbed her purse, suddenly exhausted down to her bones. "You're too soft for this business, Torres." Maybe he was right. But as Lena walked home through the rain, her stomach empty but her conscience clear, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Some things mattered more than a full belly or a slightly thicker paycheck. Outside her building, she paused under the broken streetlight. The notebook in her bag, her grandmother's recipe collection, the only thing of value she owned, pressed against her hip like a reminder of better days. Days when cooking meant joy instead of survival. Someday, she promised herself, someday things would be different. She had no idea how soon that someday would arrive, or what price it would demand. Morning arrived too soon and too loud. The pounding on Lena's door yanked her from restless sleep at 7:15 a.m. She stumbled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's uniform, and peered through the peephole. A black SUV sat parked on her street. Not just any SUV, the kind with tinted windows and a price tag that could cover her rent for a year. And standing at her door, looking wildly out of place in the dingy hallway, was a man in a suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Lena's heart hammered. Debt collectors didn't drive cars like that, neither did landlords. She cracked the door open, chain still attached. Can I help you? The man was tall, early 30s, with dark hair styled perfectly despite the early hour. His gray eyes assessed her with unsettling intelligence. Lena Torres. Who's asking? Gabriel Devereaux. He extended a business card through the gap. CEO of Devereaux Foods. I believe you met my mother last night. The world tilted slightly. Lena stared at the card, embossed, heavy stock, the kind that whispered wealth with every fiber. Your mother? Martha Devereaux. His expression softened fractionally. The woman you fed at the diner. The woman you gave your own dinner to, along with your jacket. Lena's cheeks burned. It was nothing. It was everything. Gabriel reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. She insisted I find you immediately. This is a small token of our gratitude. Through the crack, Lena could see the check inside. Her stomach dropped. $50,000. No. The word came out sharper than intended. Absolutely not. His eyebrows rose. Excuse me. I didn't help your mother for money, Mr. Devereaux. Lena straightened, despite her exhaustion, despite the rumpled uniform and the fact that she probably had pillow creases on her face. I helped her because she needed help. That's not something you pay for. Silence stretched between them. Gabriel studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve, like people didn't usually refuse his money. The thought gave her a small, petty satisfaction. Most people would take the check, he said finally. I'm not most people. Something flickered in his expression. Irritation? Respect? Lena couldn't tell. My mother would like to thank you personally, he continued, pocketing the check with obvious reluctance. Perhaps you'd allow us to take you to dinner. That's not necessary. Consider it a favor to her then, not me. His tone shifted, became almost vulnerable. She hasn't stopped talking about you since last night. The kind gesture from the young woman who treated her like family instead of furniture. Lena hesitated. Through the gap, she caught sight of the notebook on her counter, her grandmother's recipes, still sitting where she'd left them last night. A reminder of everything she'd lost, and everything she was still fighting for. Just dinner, she said finally. Nothing more. Just dinner, Gabriel agreed. But his eyes lingered on her face for a moment too long, and something in Lena's chest tightened in warning. As he turned to leave, his gaze snagged on the notebook visible through the doorway. You cook. Lena's hand instinctively moved to close the door further. Sometimes. My mother mentioned you had the hands of someone who understands food. He smiled slightly. She's rarely wrong about these things. Before Lena could respond, he was gone. Footsteps echoing down the hallway. Expensive shoes on cheap linoleum. Through the window, she watched the SUV pull away, sleek and silent. Lena closed the door and leaned against it, heart racing. She should feel relieved. Grateful even. Instead, an unfamiliar anxiety twisted in her stomach. Men like Gabriel Devereaux didn't enter lives like hers without leaving marks. And the way he'd looked at that notebook, casual, curious, had set off every alarm bell she'd learned to trust. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Dinner reservation, Friday 7 p.m. Il Corso, Manhattan. Car will pick you up at 6:30. GD. Lena stared at the message. Il Corso. She'd heard of it. The kind of restaurant where a single appetizer cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She should cancel. Should keep her head down and her life simple. Instead, she found herself typing, "Just dinner." His response came immediately, "Just dinner." But even as Lena set the phone down and tried to return to sleep, she knew the truth. Nothing in her life was simple anymore. And something told her that Gabriel Devereaux, with his expensive suits and calculating eyes, was about to complicate everything. The notebook sat on her counter, innocent and dangerous all at once. Some recipes, Lena was learning, carried prices no one expected to pay. The reservation never happened. Thursday afternoon, Gabriel Devereaux walked into the diner wearing jeans and a leather jacket, looking nothing like the polished CEO who'd knocked on her door. Lena nearly dropped the coffee pot when she spotted him sliding into a corner booth. "Table 5 needs service," Greg called from the kitchen. Lena's pulse quickened. She grabbed a menu and approached. Professional smile fixed in place. "Welcome to Jersey Joe's. Can I start you with the special?" Gabriel's gray eyes met hers with unmistakable amusement. "Whatever you recommend. The meatloaf is popular. Then I'll trust your judgment." He closed the menu without looking at it. Completely. The word hung between them, weighted with meaning Lena couldn't quite decipher. She scribbled the order and retreated to the kitchen, hyper-aware of his gaze following her. "Who's the suit?" Greg asked, squinting through the service window. "Just a customer." Lena grabbed the meatloaf plate, but her hands trembled slightly as she added the sides. On impulse, stupid, reckless impulse, she drizzled her grandmother's secret sauce over the top. The one she'd recreated from memory. The one that made even Greg's mediocre cooking taste like home. She set the plate in front of Gabriel with steady hands. "Enjoy." He cut into the meatloaf, took a bite, and went completely still. Lena watched his expression shift. Confusion, then recognition, then something close to shock. He set down his fork carefully, staring at the plate like it had personally betrayed him. "Where did you get this sauce?" Her throat tightened. "I made it. Family recipe. This exact sauce." His voice dropped low, dangerous. "I've tasted this before. We use a version of it in our Devereux signature line." He looked up at her, eyes sharp as broken glass. "Where did you really get this recipe?" Heat flooded Lena's cheeks. "I told you. My grandmother." "What's your grandmother's name?" "Elena Torres." The words came out defensive, too loud. "She taught me to cook before she died. That sauce is hers." Gabriel pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. Whatever he found made his jaw tighten. When he looked at her again, something in his expression had shifted. Calculation mixing with reluctant fascination. "Greg mentioned you cook like a real chef." It wasn't a question. Lena's instinct screamed at her to deflect, to laugh it off. But standing there under Gabriel's intense scrutiny, exhaustion won over caution. "I went to culinary school. 3 semesters at Bergen County Culinary Institute." Why stop? The question landed like a physical blow. "Because the man I loved stole everything. Because my recipes, my dreams, my future, all of it vanished in a single night of betrayal. Life happened," she said instead. "Not everyone gets to finish their fairy tales, Mr. Devereux." He studied her for a long moment, then pulled out his wallet, left $200 bills on the table for a $15 meal. "Keep the change. And Lena?" He paused at the door. "That sauce is extraordinary. Your grandmother must have been remarkable." After he left, Greg emerged from the kitchen, staring at the bills. "What the hell did you serve him? Gold-plated meatloaf?" But Lena barely heard him. Her mind raced, connecting dots she'd tried for 3 years to ignore. Devereux Foods had acquired Walsh Foods 2 years ago. Derek's company. Derek, who'd stolen her recipes and registered them under his name before she could stop him. Derek, who'd promised her the world and left her with nothing but debt and shame. If Gabriel was using her sauce, that meant Derek had sold it to him, which meant Gabriel owned something that had never been Derek's to sell. Her grandmother's legacy, packaged and profited from by men who'd never met her. Lena's hands clenched into fists. She grabbed her phone and searched Devereux signature sauce. The product page loaded, sleek, expensive, with Elena's exact flavor profile described in marketing copy that made her stomach turn. A secret family recipe, perfected over generations. Derek's family, not hers. The betrayal hit fresh, sharp as the day she'd discovered the theft. But underneath the hurt, something harder crystallized. Gabriel didn't know. He'd bought a company, bought her recipes, without knowing they were stolen goods, which meant he was either complicit or ignorant, and Lena needed to know which. That evening, her phone buzzed. "Gabriel, we need to talk. Not about dinner. About that sauce. Tomorrow, my office. Please." Lena stared at the message. Every instinct told her to refuse, to keep her head down and survive like she'd been doing for 3 years. But that sauce, her grandmother's love translated into flavor, didn't belong in a boardroom or on a production line. It belonged to her. "What time?" She typed back. 10 a.m. "I'll send a car. I'll take the train." A pause, then. "Stubborn. Careful," she corrected. "Fair enough." Lena set the phone down and pulled out her grandmother's notebook. 73 recipes, written in Elena's careful handwriting. Recipes Lena had trusted Derek with during their engagement, when she'd been naive enough to believe in love and partnership and shared dreams. She'd learned better since then. Tomorrow, she'd walk into Gabriel Devereux's world of glass towers and 7-figure deals. She'd tell him the truth, that he'd built part of his empire on stolen ground. And then she'd watch what kind of man he really was. The kind who'd do the right thing, or the kind who'd protect his investment at any cost. Outside, rain began to fall again, softer this time, like the sky was giving her space to think. Lena traced her grandmother's signature on the notebook's first page. "I won't let them erase you," she whispered. "Not anymore." Derek Walsh appeared on Friday like a ghost she'd tried to bury. Lena was refilling the salt shakers when the bell chimed. She looked up and her entire body went cold. He stood in the doorway, same cocky smile, same expensive watch, same eyes that had once promised her everything and delivered nothing but ruin. Lena. His voice carried that false warmth she'd once mistaken for charm. Been a while. Her hand steadied through sheer force of will. We're about to close. This won't take long. He slid into a booth uninvited, and everything about his posture screamed ownership. Of the space, of the conversation, of her, once upon a time. Lena stayed behind the counter, maintaining distance like a shield. What do you want, Derek? Heard you had an interesting visitor yesterday. His smile sharpened. Gabriel Devereaux, CEO of the company that now owns everything I built. Everything you stole, you mean? Careful. The warmth vanished from his voice. We both know you signed those recipes over to me. Legal and binding. Your grief over Grandma made you generous. Lies. He'd forged her signature after she'd shared her grandmother's recipes in trust. Recipes she'd been developing for the restaurant they were supposed to open together. By the time she'd discovered the theft, he'd already registered everything through Walsh Foods. Why are you here? Lena asked, fighting to keep her voice level. Derek leaned forward and something ugly flickered in his expression. Because I know what you're planning. And I'm here to remind you that going after Devereaux means going after me. Those recipes are legally mine, Lena. I have the paperwork to prove it. Forged paperwork. Paperwork that will stand up in court while you drown in legal fees you can't afford. He stood, smoothing his jacket. I'm doing well these days. Very well. The acquisition gave me enough to start 3 new ventures. I'd hate to see you destroy yourself trying to claw back something that was never really yours. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that for a split second, Lena felt herself wavering, felt that old shame creeping back, the shame he'd cultivated in her, the belief that she was nobody, nothing, just a girl with dreams too big for her station. Then she remembered Gabriel's face when he'd tasted the sauce, the shock of recognition, the way he'd looked at her afterward, not with pity, but with something closer to respect. Get out, Lena said quietly. I'm trying to help you. Get out. Derek's expression hardened. You always were too stubborn for your own good, but when this blows up in your face, and it will, don't say I didn't warn you. He left, but the poison of his presence lingered long after the door closed. Greg emerged from the kitchen, face grave. That was Derek Walsh. You know him? Know of him. Guy who sold Walsh Foods to Devereaux for millions, then bragged about it to anyone who'd listen. Greg studied her carefully. That the ex you never talk about? Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. What did he want? To remind me I'm powerless. She grabbed her coat with trembling hands. He's wrong. But as Lena walked home that night, Derek's words circled like vultures. He had lawyers, money, documentation that would look legitimate to anyone who didn't know the truth. She had a notebook and fury and nothing else. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, but the message made her heart stop. Saw Walsh leaving the diner. Whatever he told you, don't listen. Meeting still on for tomorrow. GD. He'd been watching, or having her watched. Lena couldn't decide if that was protective or predatory. Before she could respond, another text arrived. This one from a blocked number. Rich men protect rich men. Devereaux will choose his investment over your sob story. Save yourself the humiliation. D.W. Lena stared at both messages, anxiety knotting her stomach. Derek was right about one thing. Gabriel was a billionaire who'd built an empire. Men like that didn't tear down their own foundations, even if those foundations were rotted through with theft. But she'd seen something in Gabriel's eyes yesterday. Recognition, yes, but also anger. The kind of anger that came from discovering you'd been lied to. She typed carefully, I'll be there. 10 a.m. Gabriel's response was immediate. I'll have security escort you up. And Lena, bring your grandmother's notebook. I want to see everything. A third text arrived seconds later. Please trust me. Just this once. Trust. The word felt foreign, dangerous. Trusting Derek had cost her everything. Trusting Gabriel could cost her what little remained, her dignity, her grandmother's memory, her last shred of hope that justice existed for people like her. But standing alone in her tiny apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of dreams she'd been forced to abandon, Lena made a choice. Tomorrow, she'd walk into that tower with her grandmother's notebook and her truth, and whatever happened next, destruction or redemption, At least she'd know she'd fought. She pulled out the notebook, running her fingers over Elena's handwriting one more time. "Help me know if this is right," she whispered to the grandmother who'd taught her that good food came from good hearts. Outside, a car engine purred. Expensive. Quiet. Through her window, Lena spotted the black SUV parked across the street. Watching. Whether protection or threat, she couldn't yet tell. But tomorrow, she'd find out. The Devereux Foods Tower pierced the Manhattan skyline like a steel promise. Cold, sharp, unforgiving. Lena stood on the sidewalk, clutching her grandmother's notebook against her chest, fighting the urge to run. Security escorted her through a lobby that screamed wealth in marble and chrome. The elevator rose so smoothly she barely felt the movement, just the pressure in her ears and the tightening in her chest. 53rd floor. Executive Suites. Gabriel waited in his office doorway, and the sight of him stole her breath. Not the casual customer from the diner. This was the CEO in his natural habitat. Tailored charcoal suit, steel gray tie, an expression that revealed nothing. "Lena," he gestured inside. "Thank you for coming." The office was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her annual salary, and a conference table covered in documents. Legal documents, judging by the dense text and official seals. "Coffee?" Gabriel asked. "Answers," Lena countered, her voice steadier than she felt. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe. He pulled out a chair for her, then sat across the table instead of behind his imposing desk. A deliberate choice, she realized, trying to minimize the power differential. "I spent all night going through the Walsh Foods acquisition files." He pushed a stack of papers toward her. "These are the original purchase agreements. Proprietary recipes included in the sale." Lena's hands trembled as she flipped through them. There, her grandmother's signature sauce listed under Walsh Signature Blend. Her empanada filling, renamed Traditional Meat Pocket Mixture. 7 of Elena's 73 recipes, packaged and sold like commodities. The signatures on the development documents, Gabriel continued, his voice tight. They're attributed to Derek Walsh. But when I had our legal team run a deeper analysis, he pulled out another document, this one marked with red flags. The original development dates don't match Walsh Foods Incorporation timeline. Someone created these recipes before the company even existed. Me. The word came out raw. I created them. 3 years ago when Derek and I were engaged. Gabriel leaned forward, and she saw it then, genuine anger simmering beneath his controlled exterior. "Tell me everything." So she did. The culinary school scholarship she'd earned. The restaurant she and Derek had planned to open together. How she'd shared her grandmother's recipes in trust, believing in partnership and love. How he'd registered everything under Walsh Foods while she was at Elena's funeral, using forged signatures and manipulated dates. "By the time I discovered the theft, he'd already filed everything," Lena said, her voice hollow. "I tried to fight it. Spent every penny I had on a lawyer who told me it was hopeless, without proof of prior ownership. Derek had corporate documentation. I had a notebook and memories." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "You have more than that now." He pulled out his laptop and turned it toward her. On screen, an internal email chain from 2 years ago, flagged by his legal team overnight. From Derek Walsh to Devereux Acquisitions Team, Recipe Portfolio. These formulations represent 3 years of R&D investment. All intellectual property properly secured under Walsh Foods' corporate umbrella. Documentation attached. "Except the documentation is fraudulent," Gabriel said, his voice hard as stone. "I had forensics analyze the digital signatures. They were backdated, created months after Walsh Foods Incorporated, not before." Lena's heart hammered. "You believe me?" "I don't just believe you." He met her eyes, and the intensity there made her breath catch. "I'm going to help you prove it." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "You don't know me. This could destroy the Devereux signature line. Cost you millions. Why would you?" "Because I built this company on integrity." His voice dropped, rough with something that sounded like self-recrimination. "My mother taught me that wealth means nothing if you acquire it through exploitation, and I unknowingly profited from the theft of your family's legacy." He stood abruptly, moving to the windows. "That's not something I can live with." Silence stretched between them. Outside, the city sprawled vast and indifferent. "Derek will fight," Lena said quietly. "He has lawyers, money, So do I. Better ones. Gabriel turned back, and determination had replaced the anger in his expression. But I need your cooperation. Full access to your grandmother's original notebook. Testimony about the development timeline. And Lena? He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. I need you to trust me. I know that's asking a lot given what Walsh did to you, but I trust you. The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise him. But watching Gabriel rage quietly at an injustice that didn't personally harm him, seeing him willing to dismantle part of his own empire for the sake of what was right, it awakened something she'd thought Derek had killed forever. Hope. Gabriel crossed back to the table, extending his hand. Then let's bury him. Lena took his hand, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. What's the plan? First, we document everything in your notebook. Dates, context, witnesses who can verify Elena taught you these recipes. Then we file for forensic audit of all Walsh Foods documents involved in the acquisition. His smile turned sharp, almost predatory. And then we invite Derek to a very public conversation about intellectual property theft. He'll deny everything. Let him. Gabriel's eyes gleamed. I'm very good at making liars uncomfortable. They spent the next 4 hours cataloging recipes, recording Lena's testimony, building a case brick by careful brick. Gabriel ordered lunch, real food from a place that didn't use styrofoam, and they ate while working, the awkwardness gradually dissolving into focused collaboration. At some point, Lena looked up and found Gabriel watching her explain the technique behind Elena's pastry dough, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. What? She asked. You light up when you talk about cooking, he said softly. It's like watching someone remember who they used to be. The observation landed with unexpected tenderness. Lena looked away, blinking against sudden heat in her eyes. Derek made me forget. That food was supposed to be joy, not currency. We'll get that joy back, Gabriel promised. All of it. As evening fell over Manhattan, they finally had what they needed. A case, a strategy, and something neither had anticipated. A partnership that felt like the beginning of something far more dangerous than revenge. Gabriel walked her to the elevator, and in the narrow space, she was hyper-aware of his proximity, the subtle cologne, the way he looked at her like she mattered. Thank you, Lena said, for believing me. Thank you, Gabriel replied, for being brave enough to tell the truth. The doors closed between them, but his words lingered all the way home. The gala was Gabriel's idea. Annual Devereux Foundation charity event, he explained over coffee 3 days later, spreading the planning documents across the diner booth. 500 guests, press coverage, every major player in the food industry. His smile turned cold. Including Derek Walsh. Lena's stomach clenched. You want to expose him publicly. I want to give him enough rope to hang himself. Gabriel tapped the guest list. He'll come. His ego won't let him miss an event where he can network with the people who made him rich. And then what? Then we show everyone who he really is. Over the next 2 weeks, Lena's world transformed into a carefully orchestrated battle plan. Gabriel's legal team worked overtime, securing expert testimony on signature forgery. Forensic accountants traced the recipe development timeline, building an airtight case that Walsh Foods' proprietary claims were fraudulent. But the most unexpected help came from Toby. The 13-year-old had been sleeping in the alley behind the diner for months. Lena fed him when she could, slipped him cash when Greg wasn't looking. She'd told Gabriel about him during one of their planning sessions, mentioned that Toby had sharp eyes and sharper instincts. He sees things, she'd said, notices details adults miss. 2 days later, Toby appeared at the diner with his phone, face pale with excitement. Miss Lena, you gotta see this. The video was shaky but clear. Derek Walsh in a parking garage, handing an envelope to a man Lena recognized. James Brennan, reporter for the Metro Business Journal. Got what you need? Derek's voice carried clearly. Story about the sad little wannabe chef harassing successful entrepreneurs? 5,000 covers it, Brennan replied, pocketing the envelope. Should run Friday. Make sure you emphasize she's delusional. Obsessed with me since I broke off our engagement. Classic fatal attraction situation. Toby had filmed the entire exchange. The money, the conspiracy, Derek's smug expression, as he detailed exactly how to destroy Lena's credibility before she could tell her story. Gabriel watched the video 3 times, his expression growing darker with each viewing. This is attempted witness intimidation and bribery. Is it enough? Lena asked, hope and fear warring in her chest. It's perfect. He looked at Toby with newfound respect. You just became our star witness, kid. Toby's eyes widened. Really? Really, if you're willing. The boy straightened, pride radiating from his thin frame. I'm willing. Nobody messes with Miss Lena. Gabriel made calls. Within hours, Toby had a lawyer, a safe place to stay, and a promise of protection. The reporter's article never ran. Gabriel's legal team delivered a cease and desist so aggressive that Brennan reportedly went pale reading it. Meanwhile, Martha became Lena's unexpected ally. Gabriel's mother appeared at the diner one afternoon, moving slowly but with quiet determination. You're the young woman from the storm, Martha said, taking Lena's hands. Gabriel told me what that monster did to you. Tears pricked Lena's eyes. I'm sorry for bringing trouble to your family. Trouble? Martha's laugh was sharp. Darling, you brought integrity, something this family desperately needed. She squeezed Lena's hands. My son is a good man, but he'd forgotten what goodness looks like in everyday people. You reminded him. The preparations intensified. Gabriel hired a stylist, despite Lena's protests, who arrived with garment bags and gentle insistence. This isn't about changing you, the woman said, unpacking a simple black gown that somehow screamed elegance. It's about armor. You're walking into battle, dressed like a warrior. Lena tried on the dress and barely recognized herself. The woman in the mirror looked strong, confident, nothing like the broken girl Derek had left behind. Gabriel arrived to review the final timeline and stopped dead in the doorway. His eyes tracked over her, and something in his expression made Lena's heart skip. You look... He cleared his throat. Ready? I'm terrified, she admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He handed her a folder. Your speech. Keep it simple. Facts only. Let the evidence do the work. They rehearsed until Lena could recite the timeline in her sleep. Gabriel played Derek, throwing every manipulation tactic he could imagine. By the end, Lena's voice remained steady even under hypothetical assault. You're going to be brilliant, Gabriel said quietly, or I'm going to destroy both our lives. Then we'll destroy them together. He said it like a promise, like partnership, and something warm unfurled in Lena's chest. The night before the gala, Lena couldn't sleep. She sat in her apartment, grandmother's notebook open on her lap, reading Elena's notes by lamplight. Cooking is honest work, Elena had written in the margin of her empanada recipe. You can't lie with food. Either the love is there or it isn't. Lena traced the words, feeling her grandmother's presence like a benediction. Her phone buzzed. Gabriel. Can't sleep either. Nervous? Terrified, she typed back. You? Terrified, but also excited. Justice feels good, even when it costs you millions. A pause then. Especially then. Some things matter more than money. Like what? Like doing the right thing. Like you. Lena stared at those two words, like you, and felt something shift irrevocably in her chest. This wasn't just about recipes anymore. Somewhere between strategy sessions and shared coffee, Gabriel Devereux had become more than an ally. He'd become someone who mattered. Sleep, he texted. Tomorrow we change everything. Lena set down her phone and looked out at the city lights. Tomorrow she'd walk into a room full of wealth and power with nothing but truth as her weapon. It would either destroy her or set her free. There was no middle ground left. The ballroom glittered like a fever dream. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across 500 of Manhattan's elite. Designer gowns, $1,000 suits, champagne flowing like water. Lena stood at the edge of the crowd, hyper-aware that her borrowed dress, elegant as it was, couldn't disguise the fact that she didn't belong here. Breathe, Gabriel murmured beside her, his hand warm against her lower back. You have every right to be here. Do I? Lena watched a woman dripping in diamonds laugh at something her companion said. These people could buy and sell my entire life with their jewelry budgets. These people, Gabriel said quietly, are about to learn that money doesn't buy immunity from consequences. On stage, Derek Walsh commanded attention like he was born to it. Expensive tux, confident smile, every inch the successful entrepreneur. Lena's stomach twisted watching him charm the crowd, accepting congratulations on his innovative contributions to the culinary industry. It makes me sick, she whispered. Good, hold on to that. Gabriel checked his watch. 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes crawled. Derek launched into his keynote speech, voice smooth as aged whiskey. Innovation comes from passion, from dedication, from the courage to take risks and build something meaningful. Each word felt like a knife twisting. Those were her risks, her passion, her grandmother's legacy packaged as his achievement. Then Gabriel stepped onto the stage. The room quieted instantly, the kind of silence that came when real power entered a space. Derek's smile faltered for just a moment before recovering. "Gabriel Devereaux, ladies and gentlemen," Derek said, extending a hand. "The man who saw potential in what I built." Gabriel ignored the hand. "Actually, Derek, that's what we need to discuss." He nodded to the tech team. "If you'll direct your attention to the screens." The displays lit up with documents, contracts, signatures, development dates highlighted in accusatory red. 2 years ago, Devereaux Foods acquired Walsh Foods for $42 million. Gabriel's voice carried clearly, each word precisely placed. Part of that acquisition included 7 proprietary recipes, supposedly developed by Mr. Walsh's R&D team. Derek's expression remained calm, but Lena saw it, the slight tightening around his eyes. Fear. Except these recipes weren't developed by Walsh Foods at all. Gabriel clicked to the next slide. They were created by Lena Torres 3 years before Walsh Foods even incorporated. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Heads turned, seeking her out. Lena's heart hammered, but she stepped forward as planned, moving toward the stage with Elena's notebook clutched against her chest. "That's absurd," Derek cut in smoothly. "Lena was my girlfriend. We collaborated on some ideas, sure, but the actual development happened through my company, with my resources, using forged signatures and falsified dates." Gabriel's voice cut through Derek's lies like steel. "Forensic analysis confirms the documentation was backdated. The signatures on the proprietary claims don't match Ms. Torres's actual signature from that time period." The screen showed comparison analyses, damning evidence laid bare. Derek's face darkened, the charm cracking. "This is ridiculous." "Lena, tell them." "Tell them what?" Lena's voice shook, but she kept moving forward. "That you convinced me to share my grandmother's recipes because we were building something together? That you registered everything under Walsh Foods while I was at her funeral?" She reached the stage, holding up the notebook. "That you stole my family's legacy and sold it for millions?" The ballroom erupted in whispers. Phones appeared, recording everything. Derek's mask finally shattered. "You signed those recipes over. You have no proof." "Actually," Gabriel interrupted, "she has extensive proof, dated notebooks, testimony from her culinary instructors. Witnesses who can verify these recipes existed years before your company did." He paused, letting the weight settle. "And then there's this." The screen switched to video. Toby's footage from the parking garage, crystal clear. Derek's voice filled the ballroom. "Make sure you emphasize she's delusional. Obsessed with me since I broke off our engagement." The sound of cash exchanging hands. Conspiracy detailed in Derek's own words. The room exploded, gasps, outraged murmurs. Phones raised, capturing Derek's face as it drained of color. "That's taken out of context," Derek tried, but his voice had lost all authority. "I was defending myself against harassment. You were bribing a reporter to destroy Ms. Torres's credibility before she could expose your fraud." Gabriel's voice turned cold as winter. "That's witness intimidation, and it won't work." Security moved toward the stage. Real security, not the event staff, but officials who'd been waiting for this moment. Martha rose from her seat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, but her expression was pure relief. She caught Lena's eye and nodded once, fierce, proud, grateful. Derek backed away from the microphone, looking frantically for exits. "You can't do this. I have lawyers. I have—" "You have nothing but stolen property and forged documents," Gabriel said flatly. "Officers?" The police moved in professionally, efficiently. Miranda rights echoed through a ballroom that had gone silent as a tomb. Cameras flashed like lightning, capturing every moment of Derek Walsh's very public downfall. As they led him away, Derek locked eyes with Lena. The hatred there should have terrified her. Instead, she felt only a fierce, clean satisfaction. "You'll regret this," he spat. "Both of you." "No," Lena said clearly, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "I regret trusting you. I regret letting you make me believe I was worthless. But this?" She gestured to the screen still displaying the evidence of his crimes. "This I'll never regret." The crowd erupted into applause. Gabriel stepped beside her close enough that she could feel his presence like warmth against her side. "You did it," he said softly. Meant only for her. "We did it," Lena corrected. And when she looked up at him, something in his expression made her breath catch. But before either could speak, Reporters swarmed forward, questions flying. Gabriel's PR team moved in smoothly, creating space, managing the chaos. Through it all, Lena stood steady, her grandmother's notebook pressed against her heart. The truth was finally free. And so she realized, was she? The media storm was immediate and brutal. By morning, Derek Walsh's face dominated every business outlet. Food industry fraud exposed at charity gala. CEO arrested for recipe theft. Devereaux Foods unknowingly purchased stolen intellectual property. Lena watched the news from Gabriel's penthouse. He'd insisted she stay somewhere secure while the story exploded. Coffee cooled in her hands as anchors dissected every detail of the case, legal experts weighing in on potential charges, food critics expressing shock at the revelation. "They're calling you the stolen chef," Gabriel said, emerging from his office with exhaustion carved into his features. He'd been on calls all night, managing fallout. The narrative is mostly sympathetic. "Mostly?" He grimaced. "Some outlets are questioning why you didn't come forward sooner, why you let the theft stand for 3 years. The familiar shame tried to surface, but Lena pushed it down. Because I was broke, scared, and convinced no one would believe me over a successful businessman." "I know." Gabriel sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "For what it's worth, I believe you. Completely." Something in his voice made her turn. He looked hollowed out, like the night had cost him more than sleep. "What's wrong?" "I'm resigning as CEO." The words dropped like stones. "Temporarily, until the board completes a full audit of the Walsh Foods acquisition and every product line associated with those recipes." Lena's heart clenched. "Gabriel, you don't have to." "I do." His gray eyes met hers, fierce and determined. "I purchased stolen property. I profited from your family's legacy without verifying ownership. That's on me." He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the usual perfection. "My mother built Devereaux Foods on integrity. I nearly destroyed that by prioritizing expansion over ethics. You didn't know. I should have known, should have done better due diligence." His jaw tightened. "That's not the kind of CEO I want to be. Not the kind of man I want to be." The vulnerability in his admission cracked something open in Lena's chest. Here was one of the richest men in America, willing to sacrifice his position because his conscience demanded it. "You're a good man, Gabriel Devereaux," she said softly. "I'm trying to be." He looked at her then, really looked, and the intensity made her pulse quicken. "You make me want to be better." Before Lena could respond, Martha appeared in the doorway, moving slowly, but with purpose. "The morning shows want interviews, both of you." Gabriel stood immediately, slipping back into CEO mode. "Lena doesn't have to." "I'll do it," Lena interrupted. "One interview. Together. Then I want privacy." They chose a morning show known for balanced reporting. The host, Catherine Chen, had a reputation for tough but fair questioning. She wasted no time. "Ms. Torres, some viewers are asking why you chose such a public forum for these accusations. Couldn't this have been handled quietly through legal channels?" Lena met the camera directly. "I tried legal channels 3 years ago. I had no money for lawyers, no documentation that could compete with a corporation's resources. Derek Walsh was powerful, connected, and I was nobody." She paused, letting that sink in. Sometimes the only way powerless people get justice is by making noise, by refusing to stay silent just because silence is more comfortable for everyone else. Catherine nodded slowly. "And Mr. Devereaux, you're temporarily stepping down as CEO. Some analysts are calling this an overreaction." "It's not," Gabriel said firmly. "Devereaux Foods profited from theft. Even unknowingly, that's unacceptable. I need to ensure every aspect of our business practices is beyond reproach before I can ethically continue leading this company. That could cost you millions in revenue. Then it cost millions." His voice didn't waver. "Integrity isn't negotiable." The interview went viral within hours. Public opinion swung decisively in their favor, the underdog chef and the ethical billionaire against a system that had allowed theft to flourish. That afternoon, the district attorney announced formal charges against Derek Walsh. Fraud, forgery, witness intimidation, bail set at $500,000. And Martha did something that stunned everyone. She created the Torres Culinary Foundation, seeding it with $2 million to provide scholarships and legal support for chefs whose work had been stolen or exploited. "Your grandmother's legacy will help others," Martha told Lena, pressing her hands between both of hers. "That's how we honor her properly." Lena wept then, finally letting the emotions break free. Martha held her while years of grief and rage and fear poured out. When she finally pulled back, Gabriel was there, offering water and tissues and a quiet presence that felt like safety. "I'm sorry," Lena said, wiping her eyes. "I'm a mess." "You're human," Gabriel corrected gently. "You're allowed to be a mess after what you've survived." That evening, after the chaos finally quieted, Lena found Gabriel on his penthouse balcony, staring out at the city lights. "Thank you," she said, joining him at the railing. "For everything. For believing me. For sacrificing your position. For, Lena." He turned to face her fully, and something in his expression stole her breath. "You don't have to thank me. What I did was the bare minimum of human decency. It was more than that. You could have protected your investment, blamed me for not verifying earlier, thrown lawyers at the problem. Instead, you chose truth." She held his gaze. "That's not bare minimum. That's extraordinary. You're extraordinary," he said softly. "Your courage. Your refusal to stay silent even when silence was safer. The way you've carried your grandmother's legacy with such fierce love." He hesitated, then added, "The way you make me want to be the man you seem to think I am." The air between them changed, charged with something neither had acknowledged until now. "Gabriel, I know the timing is terrible," he interrupted quickly. "You're dealing with trauma, I'm dealing with corporate fallout. This is probably the worst possible moment to say this, but..." He stopped, jaw working. "I can't stop thinking about you, about the way you light up when you talk about food, the way you stood on that stage and reclaimed your truth, the way you make me believe that integrity matters more than profit." Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. "I think about you too," she admitted. "Probably more than I should." "Is that a bad thing?" "I don't know yet." She managed a shaky smile. "Ask me again when my life isn't actively imploding." Gabriel laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "That's fair." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with devastating gentleness. "But when your life stabilizes, Lena Torres, I'm going to ask you to dinner. A real dinner, not business. Just us." "Just us," she echoed, the words feeling like a promise neither was quite ready to make but both desperately wanted. Below them, the city sprawled vast and bright, full of possibility and danger and the uncertain future they'd chosen by demanding truth. For the first time in 3 years, Lena looked at that future without fear. 6 weeks after the gala, Lena stood in an empty commercial kitchen, sunlight streaming through industrial windows, and felt something she'd thought was lost forever. "Joy, what do you think?" Gabriel asked, watching her trail her fingers along the stainless steel counters. "It's a bit rough around the edges, but the bones are solid." "It's perfect." Lena turned in a slow circle, taking in the professional-grade ovens, the walk-in refrigerator, the prep stations that gleamed with possibility. "But Gabriel, I can't afford." "It's not a gift. It's a partnership." He pulled out a folder, the gesture now familiar after weeks of legal meetings and planning sessions. 50-50 ownership, equal decision-making power. Everything transparent, everything legal, everything yours as much as mine. Lena opened the folder with trembling hands. The company name was printed across the top, Verdad Gourmet. "Truth and good food," Gabriel said softly. Seemed fitting. The operating agreement was remarkable in its simplicity and fairness. Equal equity split. Her recipes, her creative control over all products. Gabriel's capital and business infrastructure, but no authority to override her culinary decisions. Built-in protections against exactly what Derek had done to her. "You wrote it so I can't be bought out," Lena observed, scanning the clauses. "I wrote it so you'll never be vulnerable again." Gabriel moved closer, and the air between them hummed with the tension that had been building for weeks. "This is your company, Lena. I'm just providing the runway." "We're partners," she corrected firmly. "Real partners. That means both of us take risks." Something warm flickered in his expression. "Then let's take them together." They spent the next month transforming the space. Martha became their unlikely third partner, investing not just capital but time, showing up with sandwiches during long planning sessions, offering decades of business wisdom tempered with genuine kindness. Toby appointed himself official taste tester and apprentice. The teenager had flourished with stability, regular meals, a safe place to sleep, tutoring that was slowly revealing a sharp mathematical mind. "Miss Lena, if we price the empanadas at $4.50 instead of $4, we could increase margins by 12.5% without pricing out our target demographic," Toby said one afternoon, calculator in hand. Gabriel looked up from his laptop, eyebrows raised. Kid's got a future in finance. He's got a future wherever he wants, Lena said, ruffling Toby's hair. College, business, whatever makes him happy. The boy beamed, and something in Gabriel's expression softened as he watched them interact. The first product line launched on a Tuesday. Lena's grandmother's original empanada recipe, properly credited. Elena Torres's traditional beef empanadas. Recipe preserved and honored by Lena Torres, Verdad Gourmet. Pre-orders sold out in 48 hours. The media coverage was overwhelming. Stories about justice, redemption, a granddaughter honoring her grandmother's legacy the right way. Food critics praised the quality, the authenticity, the fact that every package told the truth about its origins. You're trending on 3 platforms, Toby announced, scrolling through his phone. And someone made fan art of you and your grandma. Lena looked at the illustration, a young woman and an elderly woman cooking together, recipe book open between them, and had to blink back tears. Gabriel appeared at her elbow with coffee, an increasingly familiar gesture. You okay? Better than okay. She accepted the cup, letting their fingers brush. The casual touches had become frequent, natural, both of them dancing around what was building between them. I'm actually happy. Happy looks good on you. His voice dropped low, intimate. Everything looks good on you. Before Lena could respond, Martha cleared her throat from the doorway. Am I interrupting? No, they said simultaneously, stepping apart like guilty teenagers. Martha's smile was knowing. Of course not. I just came to remind you both about the contract meeting tomorrow. The restaurant group wants to carry our full line. Business exploded faster than any of them anticipated. Verdad Gourmet's ethical foundation, transparent sourcing, fair wages, recipes honored rather than exploited, resonated with a public hungry for integrity in an industry often built on exploitation. Within 2 months, they'd expanded from empanadas to 4 product lines, all using Elena's recipes. Within 3, they were hiring staff, leasing warehouse space, negotiating with national distributors. We should celebrate, Gabriel said one evening as they reviewed quarterly projections that exceeded every expectation. Celebrate how? He hesitated, and Lena recognized the look, the same careful consideration he'd shown before every major decision. I'd like to take you to dinner. Not a business meeting, not a strategy session. He met her eyes directly. A date. Lena's heart kicked against her ribs. They'd been circling this for months, building something undeniable through late-night planning sessions and shared coffee and moments when their eyes met across the kitchen and everything else fell away. Gabriel, I know we said we'd wait until things stabilized, he continued quickly. But Lena, things are stable now. The company's thriving. Derek's awaiting trial. You're safe, successful, and I can't stop thinking about you. He moved closer, voice dropping. I don't want to be just your business partner anymore. What do you want to be? Everything. The word hung between them, loaded with promise and possibility. If you'll let me. Lena thought about the girl she'd been 3 years ago, broken, exploited, convinced she deserved nothing. Then she looked at who she'd become, a woman who'd reclaimed her legacy, built something meaningful, and refused to let trauma define her future. Friday night, she said, watching his expression transform. But Gabriel, I'm paying for dessert. His laugh was pure delight. Deal. That Friday, Lena wore a dress she'd bought with her own money, not borrowed, not gifted, earned through recipes that were finally, legally, irrevocably hers. Gabriel arrived exactly on time, holding a single sunflower instead of roses. Your grandmother's favorite, according to the interviews, he said, seemed more meaningful than cliches. The gesture undid her completely. Dinner was perfect, a small Italian place in Brooklyn. No pretension, just good food and better company. They talked about everything except business, his childhood dreams of being an architect, her memory of Elena teaching her to make pastry at age 7, the way they'd both felt invisible in different ways until circumstance forced them into visibility. I was going through the motions, Gabriel admitted over tiramisu they were sharing, building an empire but forgetting why it mattered. Then you walked into my life with your grandmother's notebook and reminded me that success without integrity is just expensive failure. You reminded me I was allowed to take up space, Lena countered, that my voice mattered, that I deserved justice, not just survival. Gabriel reached across the table, lacing his fingers through hers. We saved each other, didn't we? Yeah, Lena said softly. I think we did. Walking home through Brooklyn's quiet streets, Gabriel kept her hand in his, and Lena felt something she'd stopped believing in. Hope. Real, solid, earned hope. "Thank you," she said as they reached her building. Still the same modest apartment, though she could afford better now. She wasn't ready to leave yet. This place represented survival, and she needed to remember that strength. For dinner, for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing me when it cost you millions, for being exactly the kind of man I didn't know existed. Gabriel cupped her face with devastating gentleness. "Lena Torres, you're the bravest person I've ever met. Thank you for trusting me with your truth." The kiss was inevitable, perfect, soft and searching and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "Same time next week?" Gabriel asked. "And the week after," Lena agreed. "And the week after that." The headline appeared in the Sunday New York Times. "The chef they couldn't silence. How Lena Torres reclaimed her grandmother's legacy." Lena read the article 3 times, still unable to believe it was real. The journalist had done thorough research, interviews with her culinary school instructors, testimony from friends who'd witnessed her relationship with Derek, forensic analysis of the recipe development timeline. The story painted Derek as what he was, a calculating thief who'd exploited trust and grief for profit. But more importantly, it celebrated Elena Torres, her journey from Puerto Rico to New Jersey, her decades perfecting recipes that blended traditional techniques with innovative flavors, her granddaughter who'd refused to let that legacy die in a corporate vault. "You're famous," Toby announced, bursting into the Verdad Gourmet office with a stack of newspapers. "Like, actually famous. People are lining up outside grocery stores to buy our empanadas." Gabriel looked up from his laptop, a rare smile breaking across his features. "Sales increased 340% since the Times piece. We're getting interview requests from everyone, morning shows, food networks, business podcasts." "That's overwhelming," Lena said, anxiety creeping in. "It's deserved." Martha entered carrying coffee, her movements stronger now than they'd been months ago. The stress of uncertainty had lifted, replaced by purpose. "People want authentic stories, dear. They're tired of manufactured corporate narratives." The interview requests were relentless. Lena accepted only one, a live appearance on Good Morning America with Gabriel beside her. The host, Michael Chen, was known for tough but fair questioning. "Ms. Torres, Derek Walsh's legal team is claiming you're capitalizing on his misfortune for personal gain. How do you respond?" Lena met the camera directly, her voice steady. "Derek Walsh's misfortune is called consequences. He stole intellectual property, forged documents, and attempted witness intimidation. Those are crimes, not bad luck." She paused, letting the words settle. "As for capitalizing, I'm finally being compensated for work I created. That's not exploitation. That's justice." Michael nodded. "And Mr. Devereaux, you've taken significant financial losses by pulling the Devereaux signature line and reformulating with proper licensing. Some shareholders are calling for your removal as CEO." Gabriel's expression remained calm. "Some shareholders prioritize short-term profits over long-term integrity. I'm not interested in leading a company for those people." He glanced at Lena, something warm in his eyes. "Devereaux Foods will rebuild on honest foundations, or I'll step aside permanently." The interview clip went viral. Financial analysts debated whether Gabriel's ethical stance was brilliant branding or corporate suicide. Public opinion swung decisively in their favor, especially among younger consumers who valued transparency and accountability. 2 weeks later, Derek Walsh's trial began. Lena attended every day, Gabriel beside her, watching justice unfold in real time. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: forged signatures, falsified development dates, the parking garage video of Derek bribing a reporter. Expert witnesses testified about the recipe theft, the timeline inconsistencies, the deliberate deception. Derek's defense crumbled under scrutiny. His lawyers tried arguing that Lena had verbally gifted the recipes, but Toby's video destroyed that narrative. They claimed the recipes were collaborative effort, but forensic evidence proved Lena had created them independently before Walsh Foods existed. On the 7th day, the jury returned, guilty on all counts. Derek's face drained of color as the judge listed each conviction: fraud, forgery, theft of intellectual property, attempted witness intimidation. Sentencing would come later, but the verdict alone felt like vindication. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Lena stood on the steps, Gabriel's solid presence at her shoulder, and made her only statement. This case was never about revenge. It was about truth and the principle that powerful people don't get to steal from vulnerable people without consequences. She looked directly at the cameras. To anyone who's had their work stolen, their voice silenced, their story erased, fight back. Find people who believe you. Document everything. Refuse to stay quiet, just because speaking up is uncomfortable for people who benefit from your silence. The clip played on every news channel that evening. 3 days later, Derek Walsh was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $8.2 million in restitution, his entire profit from the fraudulent sale to Devereux Foods. "It's over," Lena whispered as they left the courthouse after sentencing. "No," Gabriel corrected gently. "It's beginning." He was right. The Torres Culinary Foundation, funded by Martha's initial investment and growing through donations, awarded its first 10 scholarships to aspiring chefs from underprivileged backgrounds. Each recipient received not just tuition money, but legal protection resources, mentorship, and a support network designed to prevent exactly what had happened to Lena. Verdad Gourmet expanded into 12 states. The New York Times restaurant critic called their products a masterclass in how food companies should operate: transparent, ethical, and delicious. Food and Wine featured Elena's story and their legacy issue, celebrating immigrant women whose culinary contributions had been erased or exploited. But the recognition that meant most came from an unexpected source. A letter arrived at the Verdad Gourmet office, forwarded from Elena's old church in Newark. Inside, shaky handwriting on lined paper. "Dear Lena, I am 87 years old. I knew your grandmother in Puerto Rico before she moved to America. She wrote to me about you, her brilliant granddaughter who cooked with love and talent. When I saw you on television, I cried. Elena would be so proud of the woman you've become, the way you've honored her memory by refusing to let thieves erase her contribution to this world. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for winning. Thank you for reminding an old woman that justice still exists for people like us." Con cariño, Rosa Mendez Lena read the letter 3 times before the tears came. Gabriel found her in the office, shoulders shaking, letter clutched to her chest. "Hey," he said softly, pulling her into his arms. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She looked up at him through tears, and the smile that broke across her face was pure light. "Everything's finally right." That evening, they stood on the balcony of Gabriel's penthouse, their penthouse now, though Lena had only recently agreed to move in, watching the sun set over Manhattan. "A year ago, I was serving coffee and hiding who I was," Lena said softly. "Now I'm running a multi-million-dollar company, changing industry standards, and dating a man who makes me believe in partnership again." "Dating seems like an inadequate word," Gabriel murmured, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Considering I'm completely in love with you," Lena's breath caught. They danced around the words for months, both cautious, both carrying wounds that made vulnerability terrifying. "I love you too," she said, turning in his embrace. "Even though you're bossy and overprotective and you reorganize my spice cabinet alphabetically, efficiency is important," he defended, grinning. "So is chaos. Cooking isn't about perfect order, Gabriel. It's about instinct and adaptation and—" He kissed her, cutting off the lecture, and Lena melted into it. The kiss deepened, turning hungry, and when they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Stay with me," Gabriel said against her lips. "Not just tonight. Always. Always is a long time. Not long enough." His eyes held hers, serious and vulnerable and utterly sincere. "I want to build a life with you, Lena. A real partnership. Wake up together, work together, fight and laugh and cook together. Everything." Lena thought about the girl she'd been. Broken, exploited, convinced she deserved nothing but survival. Then she looked at who she'd become and who she wanted to be. "Everything," she agreed, and kissed him again as the city lights sparked to life below them. 3 months later, Gabriel surprised her. "Close your eyes," he said, guiding Lena out of the car with his hands on her shoulders. "This better not be another business meeting disguised as a date," Lena warned, but she was smiling. "That was one time. And you enjoyed debating supplier terms. I enjoyed winning the debate." His laugh was warm against her ear. "Keep them closed. Almost there." Lena heard a door open, caught the scent of something familiar: coffee, bacon grease, the particular combination that meant only one thing. "Gabriel, is this—" Open your eyes. Jersey Joe's diner stood before her, transformed. The neon sign had been restored, glowing bright and clean. New windows gleamed, and inside, sitting in the corner booth, Martha? Lena spotted Gabriel's mother and Toby, both grinning like co-conspirators. Surprise, Miss Lena. Toby bounced in his seat. Gabriel led her inside, his hand warm against her lower back. I bought the diner. Greg was ready to retire, and I thought maybe you'd want to come full circle. Not as a waitress this time, but as an owner. A place where you can cook your grandmother's recipes exactly as they're meant to be made. Lena's throat tightened. You bought me a diner? I bought us a location for Verdad Gourmet's first restaurant, if you want it. She looked around the space where she'd spent 3 years surviving, where she'd given her dinner to strangers and changed her life. The pain was there, yes, but so was the strength. It's perfect, she whispered. After Martha and Toby left, Gabriel pulled Lena into the corner booth, the same booth where his parents had sat that rainy night. I need to tell you something, he said, suddenly serious. I love you. Not the sanitized version. The messy, all-consuming kind that makes me want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. He pulled a small box from his jacket, and Lena's breath stopped. I know we've only been together for a few months. But Lena, I've never been more certain of anything. He opened the box. A simple platinum band with a single diamond. Elegant, understated, perfect. This is me asking for forever, Gabriel continued, his voice rough with emotion. Lena Torres, will you marry me? Time seemed to suspend. Lena looked at the ring, at Gabriel's face, vulnerable and hopeful and completely sincere, and thought about trust, how Derek had shattered it, how Gabriel had rebuilt it through consistent action and unwavering integrity. Yes, she said, and watched joy transform his expression. But Gabriel, I have conditions. He laughed, sliding the ring onto her finger. Of course you do. First we sign a prenup, a real one, protecting both of us equally. Agreed. Second, if we ever have kids, they learn to cook. Family recipes passed down properly, with credit and love. Wouldn't have it any other way. Third, she cupped his face, suddenly serious. You have to promise that if I ever get lost in work or success, you'll remind me why we started. That it was never about money or revenge. It was about honoring my grandmother's legacy with integrity. Gabriel's eyes shimmered. I promise. On one condition of my own. What's that? You do the same for me. Remind me that the empire means nothing if we lose ourselves building it. Deal. Lena kissed him soft and lingering, sealing promises that felt sacred. They stayed in the diner until midnight, planning their future. Not the business kind, the personal kind. Where they'd get married, Martha's garden. How many kids they wanted. 2, maybe 3. Whether they'd get a house outside the city. Yes, with a garden for growing herbs. I want to teach cooking classes here, Lena said suddenly. Free classes for anyone who wants to learn, especially people who can't afford culinary school. That's brilliant. Gabriel pulled her closer. Elena would love that. She would. Lena rested her head on his shoulder. I wish she could see this. She sees it, Gabriel said with quiet certainty. And she's proud. Outside rain began to fall. Gentle this time, cleansing. Through the window, the street looked different. Or maybe Lena was different, and that changed how she saw everything. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me when I was invisible. For believing me when it cost you everything. For loving me enough to help me reclaim not just my recipes, but myself. Gabriel kissed her forehead, tender and reverent. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth. For showing me what real integrity looks like. He pulled back to meet her eyes. You saved me, Lena, from becoming the kind of man who prioritizes profit over people. We saved each other, she corrected softly. Yeah, he agreed, smiling. We did. They locked up together, Gabriel's arm around her shoulders, the engagement ring catching light from the restored neon sign. Tomorrow they'd tell everyone. Tomorrow they'd start planning the wedding and the restaurant opening. But tonight was just theirs. 2 people who'd found each other through crisis and built something beautiful from the wreckage. As they drove back toward the city, Lena looked at her ring and thought about fairy tales. How she'd stopped believing in them after Derek. How Gabriel had taught her that happy endings weren't about perfection. They were about finding someone who chose you, consistently and deliberately, even when it was inconvenient or expensive or complicated. I love you, she said into the comfortable silence. Gabriel's hand found hers, squeezing gently. I love you too. Always. Always, Lena was learning. Was worth believing in after all. 1 year later, the grand reopening was everything Lena had imagined. The diner, now officially Verdad Kitchen, gleamed with renewal while honoring its history. A framed photo of Elena Torres hung by the entrance, her smile welcoming everyone. The menu featured her recipes, each one credited properly, each one prepared with love. Welcome to the first annual Torres Culinary Scholarship Dinner, Lena announced to the packed diner. 1 year ago, I was serving coffee in this exact spot, hiding my dreams because someone had convinced me they weren't worth pursuing. She looked around at the 10 scholarship recipients, young and blazing with potential. At Martha, radiant. At Toby, 17 now and preparing for college. At Gabriel, her husband of 6 months, watching her with an expression that still made her breath catch. Elena Torres came to this country with recipes, determination, and faith that hard work would be rewarded. Lena's throat tightened. She was right, but not in the way she expected. Her work was stolen, nearly erased. But we got it back. And now her legacy isn't just about food. It's about making sure what happened to her never happens to anyone else. Applause filled the space, genuine and warm. The scholarship program had grown beyond expectations. 20 students in the first year. 50 accepted for year 2. Full culinary education, legal support, business mentorship. Between courses, Gabriel stood to make an announcement. Devereux Foods is restructuring, he said. We're creating a division dedicated exclusively to ethical sourcing and recipe attribution. Any new product will require thorough documentation of its origins, fair compensation to creators, and transparent communication. He looked at Lena, love shining in his eyes. My wife taught me that success built on exploitation isn't success at all. The room erupted in applause. Later, Lena found a quiet moment in the kitchen. Elena's notebook sat on a shelf she'd built specifically for it, preserved in a custom case. Beside it, a new notebook, already half filled with Lena's own recipes. There you are. Gabriel appeared, loosening his tie. Hiding from your own party? Just taking a breath? Lena smiled. It's overwhelming sometimes. How much changed in 2 years? Gabriel wrapped his arms around her from behind. You changed it. Your courage. Your refusal to accept injustice. We changed it. Lena corrected, leaning into his warmth. I couldn't have done any of this alone. Well, you won't have to do anything alone going forward. His hand drifted to her stomach, where their secret was still hidden. Not with the 3 of us. Lena covered his hand with hers, feeling the flutter of early pregnancy. Scared. Terrified, he admitted, but also excited. This baby is going to learn to cook from the best chef I know, inherit 2 family legacies, and grow up understanding that integrity isn't negotiable. High expectations for someone still the size of a lemon. Gabriel laughed. We'll manage, together. Through the window, Lena could see the party continuing. Toby talked animatedly with scholarship recipients. Martha dispensed wisdom to young chefs. Derek's name hadn't been mentioned once. He'd become irrelevant. Your grandmother would be so proud, Gabriel murmured. Lena turned in his arms. Thank you. For everything. For believing a broke waitress with a wild story. For loving me enough to help me become who I was always meant to be. Thank you, Gabriel countered. For showing me that real wealth isn't in bank accounts. It's in integrity, purpose, and the people you choose to build a life with. They kissed, soft and lingering. Martha's voice carried from the dining room. Lena, Gabriel, the students want to hear about the recipe book project. The recipe book, Elena's 73 recipes, complete with stories and history. Publication scheduled for spring, all proceeds funding scholarships. We're coming, Lena called back. Ready? Always. They returned hand in hand. As Lena explained the book project to eager students, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back was strong, confident, surrounded by people who valued her. Nothing like the frightened waitress who'd served dinner to strangers on a rainy night. That girl had survived. This woman was thriving. The most important ingredient in any recipe, Lena told the students, isn't technique or expensive equipment. It's honesty, respect for where the food comes from, who taught you to make it, and the love that transforms ingredients into nourishment. Gabriel squeezed her hand, and she squeezed back. That, Lena continued, is my grandmother's real gift. Not just the recipes, but the understanding that feeding people is sacred work. And sacred work requires sacred ethics. Later that night, after the last guest had left, they stood outside looking at the neon sign glowing against the dark. "What are you thinking?" Gabriel asked. Lena smiled, resting her hand on her stomach. That sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the foundation for the best things we build. "I married well. You married someone who learned that recipes aren't just about food." Lena turned to face him. "They're about legacy, about refusing to let time erase the contributions of people who came before us, about honoring love, even when it costs us something." Gabriel kissed her forehead. "And what's our recipe? The one we passed down to this baby?" Lena thought about Elena's notebook, about the fight to reclaim it, about the empire they'd built on honesty. "Integrity," she said finally. "That's the recipe, the secret ingredient that makes everything else matter." "Integrity," Gabriel repeated, pulling her close. "I can live with that." Above them, rain began to fall, soft and cleansing. The same rain that had brought Martha into that diner a year ago. But this time, standing in the glow of her own restaurant, holding the hand of a man who'd chosen justice over profit, Lena didn't fear the storm. She welcomed it. Because storms didn't always destroy. Sometimes they just cleared space for new growth. "Come on," Gabriel said. "Let's go home." Home. A penthouse filled with light. A baby on the way. A business built on ethics. A marriage forged through crisis. "Yeah," Lena agreed. "Let's go home." The neon sign flickered, then glowed steady and strong. Just like Elena's legacy. Just like Lena's future. Just like love that refused to be stolen, silenced, or erased. The end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share it. Follow for more stories of courage, redemption, and love. Don't miss out.